1 year ago, almost exactly, Missouri voters got this ballot initiative petition asking these 3 things. Now, I'm going to read them off. I'm going to read them off. Make the Constitution consistent with state law by only allowing citizens of the United States to vote. Yep, sounds common sense. Require the plurality winner of a political primary party to be the single candidate at the general election. Okay. Don't know what that means, but I'll agree with that. Prohibit the ranking of candidates by limiting voters to a single vote per candidate issue. I don't know what this is. I'm going to look deeper into this. Now, how many of you would say yes to this?
I would.
So just you?
Changed my mind.
Okay. Well, we're certainly not the majority. Well, actually, we are. You are the majority. 68% of people said yes to this.
Okay.
And 31 said no to this. But it was mostly because of this. The caveat is that right there is already in the Constitution. We already have it in there. But I'm not here to focus on that. I'm here to focus on what is ranked choice voting. What is ranked choice voting? Because it doesn't say exactly ranked choice voting. It says the prohibiting of candidates to rank. Now, this is a ballot for ranked choice voting. Here's our current voting ballot. You vote for one candidate. Just one. See one candidate. Now, here, you can rank them, which means, let's say you like several types of fast food. So you rank them first choice, second choice, third choice. I like pizza first. I like burgers second. I like chicken third. It does not have to be one. Just one. Now, let's say there was a mayor election. And these are the candidates. Here's our incumbent mayor, Councilman Mo Pothole, board member, and me. Now, before we get into this, I need to explain a phenomenon in ranked choice voting. These 2 candidates right here are cross-endorsing. What does cross-endorsing?
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? Cross-endorsing means that these 2 go, hey, I'm going to have my voters rank me first, and your voters rank me, and I tell all my voters to rank you second. Seems like a good proposition. I'll do the same thing too. That's what these 2 are doing. They're asking their voters to vote for each other after voting for them. So what happens? They have to face off an incredibly popular incumbent mayor, let's say. This is the way to do it, cross-endorsing. Here's our first round. Now, in a normal election, this would be it. This would be it. It's just, he wins outright. Doesn't have a majority, but he wins. And you go on down the list, 20, 20, 19. Now, to the second round, where the candidate is eliminated, and their second choice votes goes to the rest of the candidates. So I'm gone. The board member, Gatineau Park, got like 2% more. Councilman Mo Pothole got, what was it? 15% more. And Councilman and Mayor, I Need a Car, got slightly more too. Now we go on to the third round. He's eliminated. Mo Pothole wins by a majority instead of the incumbent mayor. The incumbent is deposed in this. It's more likely in ranked choice voting for an incumbent to lose because of how many candidates there are, and you need to appeal to a lot of people. Now, that's how it works. So we're going to do a mock election over fruits.
They need their phones.
No, not yet. So, how many of you would vote grapes? Okay. How about oranges? Apples? Bananas? Okay. So it's 1, 1, 1, and 0. Not a large crowd. Yeah, you guys can see. But anyway, this is not a majority. No one has won a majority. Let's say this was several more voters. There was 10 voters. It's like times 10 all of this. That would be the same result. It would be deadlock. No one won in this round. But in other rounds where there'd be like grape 2, orange 1, banana 3, they only won because they got one more vote. That is true for several elections that we have in real life, where all it takes is just one more vote for that candidate. Okay. Now you guys need your phone. We're going to participate in a ranked choice voting election. So Grandpa and Grandma,
I'll help you. My phone won't recognize.
the QR code,
Uh-huh.
does she have the app? Grandpa?
Get out your phone. Grandpa, get out your phone.
Here, I'll help Grandpa.
I don't know how. Yeah, that does. Old phone, that one does. Oh. Okay, so now you want me to fill this in?
Yeah, go ahead and fill it in. There you go. Hello. We started the presentation 10 minutes ago. You didn't miss anything.
Okay.
We're going, do you know how to use a QR code?
Yeah,
All right.
I know what I know.
So we're going to be doing a mock ranked choice voting election with selection of fruits. Did you? Okay.
Grandpa's is older. Oh, but he. That I can't help you, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You need a QR code scanner now.
It's okay. We have 3 people.
But my vote has been.
Good. Okay. Mom, did you?
I voted.
Okay. Let's go look at the results then.
Sorry, I was being next.
Okay. Apples won outright. In the third round, though, because oranges here, we found the same thing that we just did on the regular election we just did. It was 1, 1, 1, 0. But this time there's an actual winner and there's a majority winner. Let's go to the first round. 1, 1, 1, 0. Second round, tiebreaker. Grapes is eliminated. Oranges is eliminated. And apples wins outright. 50% of the vote, at least 50% of the vote they want. You have won a majority in this election. Apples. Okay. Now back to the presentation. There we go. All right. We're going to look at a few examples of ranked choice voting implemented in other states. First one we will do is Alaska. Alaska voted by ballot measure to implement ranked choice voting in their elections in 2020 by a 4,000 vote margin. Now, we didn't see the results, the actual effects of it, until the 2022 U.S. House of Representatives election for Alaska between Mary Peltola, Democratic, Sarah Palin, Republican, and Nick Buttigieg III. We're going to see how Palin and Peltola act because of ranked choice voting. Now here's a video of Palin as a VP candidate in the 2008 election about how she talks about her opponent. And then this is a video of Palin in the US House election with ranked choice voting about how she talked about her opponent. First one.
Is someone who sees America as imperfect enough to pal around with terrorists who targeted their own country?
Palin made the charge at 3 separate events in California Saturday.
I was reading today a copy of the New York Times. Turns out one of his earliest supporters is a man who, according to the New York Times, was a domestic terrorist and part of a group that, quote, launched a campaign of bombings that would target the Pentagon and the U.S. Capitol.
Now that was without ranked choice voting. This is with ranked choice voting about how she talks to Mary Peltola.
Congress. You know, it's so funny that even in this race, people actually hold our friendship against us. They act like, oh, we're not really committed to the planks in our individual platforms, because our platforms are they're not adverse, but they're quite opposite of one another's. But I have great respect for Mary. Hopefully my track record proves that, again, I'm able to play as a teammate. I know what it takes to win. And in this day and age of so much division, so much politics of personal destruction and lies in campaigns especially, it's quite disheartening. So it is heartening to get to stand beside somebody who gets it. Maybe it's kind of that Alaskan chick thing, you know? Tough Alaskans, commercial fish, were pregnant at the same time in office, took some heat for that too. On and on, personally speaking, and even professionally, somebody like Mary and I who can get along, let that be an example.
You guys notice that? We went from my opponent is friends with terrorists to my opponent is friends with me with ranked choice voting. This is the most polarizing figure of the 2010s. As soon as ranked choice voting is implemented, she is no longer polarizing. In ranked choice voting, you saw in Alaska, those debates, the candidates would interact in a civic way. There was very few personal attacks on each other, even if there was a polarized environment at that time. Now let's go 100 miles southeast. Hold on.
Opponent is someone who sees
To New York. New York City had their Democratic primary, not general election, Democratic primary become ranked choice voting. Now that's a little different because in a general election, all candidates from all political parties have to appeal to all citizens somehow to get a majority. But in a primary, they have to appeal to the most primary voters. Now, New York City, you don't have to be a Democrat to vote in their primary. Let's see what happens by 2025. They implemented it 2021, but they won't see the effects of it until 2025. Now, let's go back to 2024. New York City, in the 2024 election, had one of the biggest rightward shifts in voting history for that constituency. So there was this New York City assemblyman, young assemblyman from Queens. He was curious, why? New York City is supposed to be very democratic leaning. Why did we go so far to the right? He goes 2 weeks after the election and he interviews these voters asking, why'd you vote for Trump? Why did you not vote for Harris? Why'd you not vote at all? And he got several answers ranging from Gaza to healthcare, all that. But the number one figure was affordability. People could not afford things. Gas was going up, energy was going up, and Trump promised to bring those down more than the Democrats did in 2024. Well, what does this young assemblyman do after getting this knowledge? He runs for mayor. This is Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani runs as mayor another 2 weeks after this happened and realized that ranked choice voting actually incentivizes these people to vote. He becomes the candidate for the Trump voters. You can see this in his platform. Fast and free buses, childcare for all, freeze the rent. All of these things have to do with affordability, which is what Trump voters will care about. Another thing, even while appealing to Trump voters in the primary, he does a cross endorsement. As we saw earlier, cross endorsement is where a candidate and another candidate agree to exchange second place votes. He does this with a establishment progressive Brad Lander. Now, Mamdani's coalition expanded not only to Trump voters, who are not even in the Democratic primary, but also to the establishment within New York. He has a majority in the primary. Now, before ranked choice voting was implemented, let's say last non-incumbent election, 2013, the strategy that you wanted in a Democratic primary is to get the vote out to those who have always voted. They've always voted the Democratic primary. Don't even consider everyone else. Just those people. But now with ranked choice voting, they have to expand their base beyond the Democratic primary. Even if it was just implemented in the primary, they have to expand it beyond. Okay. Now that we've seen other states, we're going to go back and see if it worked. Did it work for Mamdani? Let's check it out. So this is all of the areas Trump won in 2024. Bit of Staten Island, actually good amount of Staten Island, good amount of Bronx, tiny bit of Queens, and very, very few slivers of Brooklyn. Now Mamdani, what did he win? Small bits of Staten Island, a little bit of Brooklyn, so much Queens, and tiny pockets in Manhattan and the Bronx. But what did they both win? Now, this might not look like a lot of overlap, but this is 50,000 votes in total between the two candidates. 50,000 votes have voted for Trump and Zoran Mamdani in the primary. That is 1/10 of Mamdani's voter base right there. Now that we've seen New York City, Alaska, let's go back to Missouri. Now, Missouri, instead of implementing ranked choice voting, completely banned it, as you saw earlier. They completely banned ranked choice voting in that amendment we saw earlier. And it was a very, very, not close at all. Well, what was the effect of that? Go to the 2024 Secretary of State election. This guy, Denny Hoskins, we're going to focus on him. He won by 57% of the vote. Must mean he's really popular. Let's look at this primary now. 24% of the vote. He gets 24% of the vote and still wins the Republican primary. 80% of people voted against him, and he still leads the Republican Party into the general election. He was up against 7 candidates. All had roughly equal vote percentages. All he did was get roughly 50,000 more votes and won. 80% of people didn't vote for him, and he still won. He still went on to the general election. Now, why? We've talked a lot about what happened with ranked choice voting and how it's been banned in Missouri. But why do we need it? Why do we need it? So what? So what? Firstly, we need to make third parties viable. That these parties can now win in a ranked choice voting election. I will explain this later. Secondly, we've already seen this, but it encourages civility. You can keep attacking your opponent on and on and on and on. That's perfectly fine in a ranked choice voting election. You can keep attacking your opponent, but you still have to offer an example for those second, third, fourth choice votes. So actually, you're just losing if you focus on an attacking campaign there. Now, thirdly, teamwork is actually required because there's more parties in your government. There is no majority by one party. There's no one-party rule that we see in China or something like that. They have to, yeah. They actually have to. They have to actually compromise and do teamwork with other parties. Now we're going to look at the first point. Why do third parties fail, first of all? If ranked choice voting makes them viable, why can't they just win in this one? We're going to look at 3 examples why they fail. First one, they need massive enthusiasm to start one. They need celebrities to join onto this. They can't just have some normal Joe Schmo run. No one is going to look at that. Secondly, 2 parties have a habit of stealing the third party's platform and using it to take their votes, completely diminishing the reason for that party. Thirdly, the most important one is that third parties are branded as spoilers. They affect the election, but they don't have any chance of winning whatsoever. Firstly, we're going to look at the Progressive Party of 1912. Now, let's go back to 1901 when William McKinley was assassinated and his vice president, Roosevelt, took power. Roosevelt went on to enact sweeping environmental regulations, sweeping labor and regulations, and lowered tariffs, completely unorthodox for a Republican, but it was completely popular to the rest of the country. Now, by the time he's served 2 terms, it's 1911, he's got to select a predecessor. His current vice president he's not looking at because he's only a placeholder. He's looking at other candidates. These are the candidates he's looking at because he knows whichever one of these candidates will go on and win because of how popular Republicans are at this time. Now he goes to Henry Cabot Lodge from Massachusetts, 2 conservative. Charles E. Hughes, Supreme Court, he's not really interested in the presidency. But Taft, Secretary of War, has been a loyal friend of Roosevelt all these years, carrying out his agenda, his entire administration. Well, Roosevelt selects Taft. And Taft goes on to win 1908 in a landslide. But let's just take a look at what Taft does in office. Remember how I told you about those environmental regulations? Goodbye. But then, his environmental administrator, appointed by Roosevelt, says, no, I don't like this. Taft, please stop doing that. What does Taft do? Throw the book at him, followed by the chair. He's gone now. Next. Remember how I talked about Roosevelt lowering all those tariffs and making free trade? Well, Taft wants tariffs again. He's repealed that entire thing. Gone. At this point, Roosevelt is so mad. All of what he's done in office is being repealed by his so-called best friend. What does he do? He runs as a Progressive Party candidate in 1912. He starts the Progressive Party himself as a break-off from the Republican Party, taking all the progressive Republicans with him. His running mate is the governor of California, Hiram Johnson, another progressive Republican. You see that having a former president on a third-party ticket, that is name recognition. People go into the polling place. They're not going to vote. They're not always going to vote straight ticket. They're going to vote whose name sounds most familiar in their mind. That's why third parties need massive enthusiasm to overcome the massive advertising of the two parties. Let's look at the map. Yeah, he didn't win, but Taft took a really big loss. This is the only time one of the two-party candidates ended up in third place. He got 8 electoral votes. Now, Roosevelt, on the other hand, achieved 120-something and came in second place. But you see a lot of blue on this map. This is Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson saw the division in the Republican Party because Roosevelt didn't really appeal to Wilson's supporters because Wilson was more moderate. At least the Democratic Party at large was more moderate. He took all of those Republican voters in Republican safe states to make them vote third party, which makes Wilson win so much more, come out at top. That was 1912. And after this, Roosevelt says, yeah, I've embarrassed Taft enough. I'm going to go back to the Republican Party. So what does 1916 look like? Not a single bit of green. There is no green on this map. There's no green. There's no progressive candidate running in 1916 because the golden boy of the Progressive Party has left. And without him, the Progressive Party has no one else to stand on. No one has the massive enthusiasm than Roosevelt did. That was the first reason to why they fail. Now, the second reason is the Reform Party. The Reform Party of the 1990s was a collection of Republicans, populists, Democrats, moderates, very big tent party that went through the 80s where Reagan promised them a lower deficit and watched Reagan cut taxes and a huge deficit ballooned. Fiscal conservatives were up in arms, as with Ross Perot. Ross Perot was the billionaire from Texas who started the Reform Party in 1996. After 1992, he pulled off the most impressive popular vote share in modern political history for a third party, 19% of the vote. No states, but it was 19% of the vote. Now, this is Jesse Ventura, who was a socially progressive but fiscally conservative person who won in an upset in the governor's race in 1998. But by that time, they die. I'll talk about that later. Now, they were running off of deficit needs to end and other thing, NAFTA. NAFTA was huge in the Midwest, the North American Free Trade Association. This party was the only party advocating for not enacting NAFTA. And NAFTA was very unpopular with the Midwest because the Midwest saw that these jobs were going to move away to Mexico or Canada, which were part of the agreement. Now, how did the two parties respond? Well, after 1992, Clinton came into office. He immediately, with his vice president, instituted the National Performance Review. The National Performance Review was an initiative to make government more like a business. Everything had to be run smoothly, no corruption whatsoever. Now, this is a common talking point with the Reform Party. They wanted no corruption, very radical, centrist, technocratic. This is very technocratic. This alone takes most of the voters. Secondly, the deficit. Clinton's administration went from massive deficit under Bush to a surplus in 2000. Because of this, by 2000, the Reform Party sputters out and dies as soon as Ross Perot leaves and sees the writing on the wall. There are no more voters because they took their promises and policies. Thirdly, is the Green Party. Now this right here is a Lebanese American activist named Ralph Nader, environmental activist. Let's go back to the 1960s. He's a lawyer and a teacher in Yale. One of his friends, named Frederick Condon, is driving along in the New Hampshire countryside in his car. Now back then the cars were just driving death boxes. They had no airbags, no professional seat belts, and very poor glass. Shattering glass. It's disputed what actually happens to him, but he's driving along. He must have hit something or spun out because he was thrown out of the car, through the windshield, cutting at him, half in, half out of the front windshield. And for the rest of his life, he became paraplegic. Ralph Nader, after this, is in so much fervor, he writes a piece about this. And he writes another. He writes another. He realizes that these car companies, General Motors, Chrysler, Ford, they're all making these cars knowingly that they can easily kill people. In 1965, the high water mark is he publishes Unsafe at Any Speed. It is such a moving book that Congress moves to regulate the automotive companies on their practices and safety. But Nader's not done. In 1970s into the 80s, he becomes a consumer protection advocate. He's going after the Tide Pods. He's going after the medicine caps on your medicine to keep away from kids. He's going after your sharp toys your kids are playing with. He's doing all of this throughout the 70s and 80s. He's getting most of it done. It's a matter of scheduling to him. He just meets with the lawmakers will do it. They find a compromise. But going into the 80s, going into the late 70s and 80s, he starts noticing he's getting really frustrated. Very frustrated because it was a matter of scheduling now. But now, with Carter, going into Carter, things are getting shot down. Carter won't help him. The Democratic Party will not help him. The Republican Party under Reagan definitely didn't help him and repealed all of his consumer regulations. At least they wanted to. Well, what does he do? He completely splits off from the Democratic Party and runs part of the Green Party with a completely different platform from the Democrats and Republicans. Let's look at their platform. Now, here is the major party candidates with Nader and what their platform is. Gore's is slight campaign finance reform, incremental environmental regulations, and expanding existing government healthcare programs. Go on to Nader, expansive campaign finance reform, aggressively campaign against climate change, and universal healthcare. Bush, little to no campaign finance reform, loose environmental regulations, and market-based healthcare reform. Now I ask you, which one of these candidates is most like Nader? How many of you think it's Bush? How many of you think it's Gore? Raise your hands if it's Gore. Correct. Gore sees what is called taking votes away from Gore. Many disaffected progressives that were in the Democratic primary or party moved to Nader because he has all of these expansive policies that he supports. Gore loses more votes than Bush does in 2000. So we're going to look at the actual election. It all comes down to Florida in 2000. At first, Al Gore is projected the winner early on at 8 p.m. on election night. Then it's thrown back. Every state has been counted, but it's thrown back into undecided. Next, Florida is projected for Bush. So Al Gore picks up his phone, says, "Hey, Mr. Bush, Governor Bush, thank you for this tough campaign. Have a nice time in the White House." Hangs up. Then it's back in the undecided category. So Gore picks his phone back up and does something that no major party has done in several hundred years. "Yeah, Gore, you know about that concession? I'm rescinding it, sorry. Goodbye." Now, it goes back to undecided. This is the day after election night. Going into December, we still don't know who won Florida. There becomes a recount effort led by the state to see who actually wins because of how close it is. Eventually, Florida is decided by 537 votes. Just 537 determines who wins the presidency for 4 years. Who puts in their agenda? Who puts in their ideology in the White House? 537 votes. It goes to Bush. And Al Gore finally concedes his last concession. Now, we've been through a lot so far with the 2000 election. Florida has been thrown around at least 4 to 5 times. So instead of Gore blaming himself, he takes a look at the vote counts in Florida. He's got 2.9 million. Bush has 2.9 million. Nader has just under 100,000 votes. Just 537 of those votes from Nader, if they had gone to Gore, 538 of them, he would have won the entire presidency. So Gore's campaign goes on to absolutely smear him. He won just 2% of the vote nationwide. It's his fault. It's his fault, okay? Go back to inspecting automobiles. Thanks for electing Bush. Thank you for Iraq. Thank you for the tax cuts. Thank you for No Child Left Behind. It's all you, Nader. After that smear campaign, it is so much backlash to the Nader campaign that he never achieves anything to 2% again, ever again. He runs at least 3 more times after this, but he never achieves it ever again. So he's a spoiler who can affect the election, but cannot actually win. It was so bad, the smear campaign, that at an event in California, he was pied. He was pied by he was pied by a unknown person at an event with another Green Party candidate. And there's reports where where Nader, he gets pied. He just looks right back at the person, takes the pie off of him, and throws it right back at him. Now I'm going to talk about the third thing. The pattern of the politically homeless. We have been through 3 third-party movements in the past ever so amount across the 20th century. Here, let me move this. This is our political spectrum. Far left, center. Now, in a law created by Dervanger, in the system that we work with it, the first past the post voting system, there will always be 2 parties. But those 2 parties will always have to appeal to the mainstream voters. So we're going to look at examples. Here's 1912. The Democrats were roughly around here. Republicans, roughly around here. Then the progressives, all the way over here. Now, with just the Republican and Democratic parties, this entire place is politically homeless. The entire quadrant. Without the Progressive Party, the entire place is politically homeless. Now, next one, 1990s. Here are the Democrats. And here are the Republicans. Again, parts of this spectrum are not covered, meaning there are still politically homeless people. That's where the Reform Party comes in. Takes populists from the far right, far left, some in the center. But again, they don't win. They don't win anything. They're just there for the politically homeless. Next is the 2000s. Now, the funny thing with this is, as soon as the Democratic Party took up the reform voters by shifting to the center and right, they lost another group from the left that caused the Green Party. And here's the Green Party. They took up the far left. As you see, third-party movements, they come and go, but one thing stays the same. there will always be someone politically homeless. There will never be someone here not covered. There will never be someone here covered completely by a party candidate because they have to appeal to the mainstream. These two parties will always fail to cover all voters.